Next on Currents News, Pope Francis travels to the United Arab Emirates on a mission to bridge a religious divide. The trip is also one for the history books.
Worshippers inside this Brooklyn mosque react to Pope Francis meeting with Muslim leaders, strengthening interreligious dialogue. I'm Tim Harfman, and that story is coming up.
Ines San Martin is right by the Pope's side, flying with him to the U.A.E. She gives us the latest details about the journey. Plus, I'll report on the powerful Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral to begin the celebration of Black History Month. The news starts right now. Pope Francis being welcomed to the United Arab Emirates, the first pontiff ever to visit the Arabian Peninsula. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. The Holy Father is seeking to turn a page in Christian-Muslim relations with his journey to Abu Dhabi. He's also greeting the country's small but thriving Catholic community. Currents News' Emily Druby is here with the latest on the historic mission. Emily, what can you tell us?
Liz, the theme for this 40-hour trip is, quote, "Make me a channel of your peace." Pope Francis hoping to be a messenger of hope and a bringer of peace. He stuck to this theme during his first and only speech of the trip.
We are here to desire peace, to promote peace, to be instruments of peace.
Pope Francis spoke of peace at an interreligious meeting during his three-day trip to Abu Dhabi. Speaking to hundreds of religious leaders and scholars, Pope Francis condemning violence in the name of religion.
Every form of violence must be condemned without hesitation, because we gravely profane God's name when we use it to justify hatred and violence against a brother or sister. No violence can be justified in the name of religion.
Discussing the importance of dialogue and prayer and criticizing the arms race, specifically mentioning the crisis in Yemen.
Human fraternity requires of us, as representatives of the world's religions, the duty to reject every nuance of approval from the word war. I am thinking in particular of Yemen, Syria, Iraq, and Libya.
This speech happening during the first papal trip ever to the Arabian Peninsula. It kicked off Sunday after Pope Francis landed at the Abu Dhabi Presidential Airport. On Monday, the Holy Father attended a welcome ceremony at the Presidential Palace. His small Kia car greeted by cannons and music. While at the palace, Pope Francis signed the Book of Honor and had a private meeting with government authorities, including Abu Dhabi's Crown Prince, who tweeted that they discussed, quote, enhancing cooperation, consolidating dialogue, tolerance, human coexistence, and important initiatives to achieve peace, stability, and development for peoples and societies. Pope Francis also touring the Grand Mosque of Sheikh Zayed and attending a private meeting with members of the Muslim Council of Elders, also signing a human fraternity document which calls for interfaith harmony and the spreading of peace. The goal of this historic trip to strengthen ties with the Muslim world.
Pope Francis's short but important trip continues tomorrow. He will leave the country in the afternoon after celebrating a Holy Mass. Liz?
Emily, during that speech, the Holy Father said he's looking forward to other opportunities for meetings in the area, which begs the question, when is he coming back?
Well, Pope Francis will be back in the Middle East at the end of March. He's taking a trip to Morocco, where he'll visit the cities of Rabat and Casablanca. He was invited there by the king. Liz?
All right, Emily, thank you very much. Pope Francis has a rich history of reaching out to the Muslim world over the course of his papacy. And for more on that, we go to Currents News' Tim Harfman, who's standing by at Brooklyn's Islamic Society of Bay Ridge Mosque. Tim.
Liz, worshippers I spoke with say they're happy to hear that Pope Francis is continuing his mission to strengthen dialogue between Catholics and Muslims. Inside Brooklyn's Islamic Society of Bay Ridge, Muslim worshippers understand the importance of Pope Francis's mission to bring Christians and Muslims closer together.
It's always good for people to get together and just talk and get to know each other, get to understand each other.
The Holy Father has a history of getting to know and understand Muslims throughout his 6-year pontificate, including a visit to the home of a Muslim family when Francis was in Milan in 2017. And planting a peace tree at the Vatican in 2014 with a host of Muslim leaders, as well as the Israeli and Palestinian presidents participating. Monsignor Guy Massey, Vicar for Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs for the Brooklyn Diocese, says these activities are essential.
It's very important for world religious leaders to respect each other. If anything, if they believe in God, then they believe in God's creation and they believe in the dignity of humanity.
He argues that as global moral leaders, the church should be at the forefront of fostering improved religious relations.
Having that position and that we could take the responsibility to say, let's talk for our good and for the good of everyone else.
And that dialogue can then lead to even more serious conversations.
Now I've established a relationship with you. Now we can sit down and talk about the more thorny issues.
For these Brooklyn Muslims, they say that through talking with one another, the stronger the relationship will become.
Knowledge is power. As long as people understand each other, it's a good thing. Then they don't fear each other.
Some people, they think that we're bad and we are terrorists. We're not.
And many Muslims here at the mosque insisted the Holy Father's mission is a vital one and a great way to strengthen interreligious respect and understanding. In Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, Tim Harfman, Currents News. Liz, back to you.
Crux Rome Bureau Chief Ines San Martin is on the Arabian Peninsula with the Holy Father for this historic trip, and she joins us now. Ines, this is the first ever papal visit to the Arabian Peninsula where Catholics actively face persecution. Could Francis's visit spearhead some kind of change now?
I think so, Liz. But first of all, something we have to clarify is that even though Catholics do suffer persecution in the Arabic Peninsula, their situation in the United Arab Emirates, which is where Pope Francis is today, is definitely better. This is a country that is known for its tolerance and its openness to other religions, although it has to be said, is not really religious freedom, which is why Pope Francis urged the Emirates to guarantee today to all its citizens.
Now, Pope Francis gave his first public speech this afternoon during a meeting with Muslim, Jewish, and Christian leaders. What came out of that meeting?
To be honest, a lot more than what we were expecting for. Because at the very end of the meeting, Pope Francis was here to close an interreligious meeting, and what they did, and by they I mean Pope Francis and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, signed a religious declaration that is called, let me get you the right name because it's long, the Human Fraternity Document for World Peace and Living Together, in which they talk a lot about how religion is not made for violence, that the name of God doesn't need to be defended, and it never can be defended through violence, that it can never be used to justify violence. Other than that, we heard some very compelling speeches, both from Pope Francis and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar.
Anything about the clerical sex abuse crisis?
There was very little comment, but this is definitely not the place, I guess, the Pope Francis trip to the United Arab Emirates for him to be focusing on. But he did, in fact, mention it when he praised the country for hosting a conference last year on safety for children on the online world, which is actually a continuation of a conference that was hosted in one of Rome's pontifical universities with Pope Francis' support.
How are the Holy Father's hosts reacting to this historic visit?
Everyone here is very welcoming. I had the opportunity of actually talking to several taxi drivers, and all of them are very happy. People here, both Muslims and Christians, and also people of other religions. It's important to say there are people from some 200 different nationalities living today in the United Arab Emirates, and obviously not all of them are Muslims or Christians. They're Hindus or Buddhists or Jews, and all of them are reacting in a very positive way to Pope Francis' visit. It's definitely a welcome one.
All right, Ines, thank you so much. Always a pleasure talking with you. Great reporting there, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you very much, Lisa. You too.
More history is ahead for the Pope. A giant mass tomorrow in Abu Dhabi's main sports arena. 135,000 worshipers are expected to attend. Some are promoting the service as the largest show of public Christian worship ever on the Arabian Peninsula. The Catholic Church believes there are about 1 million Catholics in the U.A.E. Most are Filipino and Indian who've left families behind for work. New York's Pope station, Net TV, and Currents News will have continuing coverage of the Holy Father's trip to the U.A.E. In addition to tomorrow's Mass, Francis is scheduled to visit St. Joseph's Cathedral in Abu Dhabi before he heads back to the Vatican. America's bishops are condemning the new abortion law in New York and similar proposals elsewhere as acts of evil. The measure, signed by Catholic Governor Andrew Cuomo, allows abortions as late as the 9th month of pregnancy. The bishops are saying, quote, "This legislation is evil, pure and simple, and it shocks the conscience to see such evil legislation greeted with raucous cheers and standing ovations. It is sickeningly dishonest to claim that women's lives or health depend on intentionally killing their children." Many Catholics are angry over the new law, and some have called for Governor Cuomo's excommunication. We want to talk to the governor about this. Currents News is extending an open invitation to Mr. Cuomo to appear on this program. So far, we have not heard back from his office. If you want to contact the governor directly and let him know your thoughts about the abortion law, here's his number, 212-681-4580. The gift of the Eucharist should be denied to Catholic politicians who publicly support abortion. That's what Bishop Thomas Daly of Spokane is calling for. He wants them to reconcile with Christ and the church before going up for communion. In a letter to his diocese, the bishop writes, quote, "God alone is the author of life, and for the civil government to sanction the willful murder of children is unacceptable. For a Catholic political leader to do so is scandalous." One of the big stories coming up tomorrow, President Trump addressing the nation on the State of the Union. He'll speak to a joint session of Congress, as he did last year. A major topic expected in the speech, the wall at the southern border with Mexico. This morning, Trump tweeted, "With caravans marching through Mexico and toward our country, Republicans must be prepared to do whatever is necessary for strong border security. Dems do nothing. If there is no wall, there is no security. Human trafficking, drugs, and criminals of all dimensions, keep out." There's a lot more news headed your way. The furor over Virginia's governor and a racist photograph. The calls for him to resign are getting louder. Captured terror suspects accused of bombing a Catholic cathedral in the Philippines. How they wound up in custody is ahead. A Catholic healthcare network is now ensuring transgender surgery. I talked to an expert about the ethics of that decision. And do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. The Catholic leader of Arlington, Virginia, is criticizing the state's Governor Ralph Northam over a racist photograph and his backing of abortion, even up to the moment of birth. Bishop Michael Burbidge is saying, quote, "The Catholic Church renews its firm call for the protection of all human life and the respect for the dignity of each and every person. We ask the governor to do what is best to restore the trust and confidence of the people in our leaders." Tonight, political leaders from both parties are stepping up pressure on Northam to step down. So far, he's refusing. Mary Maloney is covering the story and has the latest.
Ralph, resign! Protesters gather outside of Virginia's capital as the governor huddles inside with staff. Ralph Northam is trying to figure out how to move away from this racist photo. It appeared on his page from his 1984 medical school yearbook. Initially, the governor said he was in the photo.
I accept responsibility for my past actions.
24 hours later, Northam changed his tune.
I'm telling the truth today. That was not my picture.
A new Virginia way! Almost instantly, members of both parties called for his resignation.
The governor's lost the confidence of the people and cannot effectively govern.
We just don't think there's any place for this in the 21st century.
I believe him to be a good person. However, I think for the betterment of our Commonwealth of Virginia, he has to step down.
According to Virginia's Constitution, a governor can be removed from office, but it's not easy.
Obviously, on impeachment, that's a very high standard. And so I think that's why we have called for the resignation. We hope that's what the governor does. I think that would obviously be less pain for everyone.
As the governor asks for time and space to make his decision, he remains in power, but with little support.
I believe the governor has to make a decision that's in the best interest of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Mary Maloney, Currents News.
An update tonight on that horrible terror attack against a Catholic cathedral in the Philippines. 5 men accused of the deadly twin bombings last month are finally behind bars after turning themselves in. The blast at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Cathedral killed 23 people and wounded about 100 others. The men are accused of being Abu Sayyaf terrorists. Police say the attack was carried out by 2 Indonesian suicide bombers. Tonight, more nations around the world are lining up against Venezuelan strongman Nicolas Maduro as he asks the Pope for help. Anti-regime protesters filled the streets again this weekend, while Germany, the UK, Spain, and France joined the U.S. in publicly supporting opposition leader Juan Guaido and demanding the country hold free and fair elections as soon as possible. Late yesterday, Maduro said he sent a letter to Pope Francis asking for his help as mediator between the opposition and the government. Maduro added that he's a practitioner of faith and a practitioner of prayer. A Catholic healthcare network in the U.S. is now covering transgender surgeries in its insurance plan. The change in policy came after Peace Health, a Catholic organization operating 10 hospitals in the western U.S., was sued by the ACLU. John Brahaney is an ethicist at the National Catholic Bioethics Center in Philadelphia, and he joins us now. John, thank you so much for tackling this very complicated issue with us today. You said such coverage does fall short on Catholic ethical grounds. How so?
How so? Because the Catholic Church teaches that we need to respect our bodies and the integrity of our bodies. Certainly, someone might have a disease like cancer or gangrene or something in which they may have to sacrifice a part of the body to save the whole, but otherwise we should respect the body that we were given by God, and we believe that man was created male and female, and that our body shares in our human dignity. So some of the practices that we see in society of people trying to change the characteristics of their sex or gender identity really involve harming the body and aren't consistent with our Catholic teaching.
Taking it beyond ethics, John, some are concerned that Peace Health's decision is now setting a precedent, and it's a precedent that other private organizations could be forced to cover medical procedures that they have moral issues with. That's a big deal. What do you say to that?
Well, I'm quite concerned about it. The federal government under the Obama administration tried to establish by rule that all insurance companies, all health insurance policies and companies had to cover these procedures. And in fact, any doctor or healthcare professional would have to go along with them. So we already saw that coming from the federal government. What I'm concerned about in this decision is that Peace Health said, we will follow whatever Aetna, a secular health insurance company, says ought to be covered. They should be following our Catholic beliefs. They should not outsource an ethical decision to a secular insurance company.
How easy would it be to follow the Catholic beliefs? Is that a difficult decision to make?
Well, in our times when there's a tremendous amount of social pressure, it's hard to stand up for the faith. I think it's certainly possible to do it. We've seen many Catholic companies and health insurance companies saying we're not going to cover abortifacients, contraceptives, sterilization procedures. They do this already in other scenarios for other issues, so they could do it.
John, some argue that this decision, it's very personal, should be between a patient and a doctor. What do you say to that?
Well, I want to emphasize that the people who suffer from gender dysphoria are suffering a lot, and we really want them to have effective treatments and not treatments that are going to harm them. And yet what we see in this case and in other areas of the social debate is that they want other people to pay for it. That's what they want. You could say it's between them and their doctor, but they want everybody to contribute to paying for it and making it available.
All right, John, so much more to explore with you, but we have run out of time. Thank you so much. We're going to have you back.
I'd love to come back.
Thank you. News tonight of a troubling trend involving millennials. Rates of obesity-fueled cancers are now rising in younger age groups. That's according to a major study by the American Cancer Society. The research examined 12 types of cancer linked to obesity, those most at risk, people aged 25 to 49. Still to come on Currents News, a rousing celebration at St. Patrick's Cathedral to kick off Black History Month. I attended the powerful Mass that commemorated a legacy of service and the Catholic faith. We'll be right back. A Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral in honor of Black History Month. The liturgy begins with a chorus of voices singing with joy. The first weekend of Black History Month and the Catholic faith was front and center. The annual Archdiocesan Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral, a call to service, unity, and faith. And of course, what's a celebration without song? Powerful, charismatic sounds of celebration. Praise and prayer from hundreds gathered in St. Patrick's Cathedral to celebrate Black History Month and the National Day of Prayer for the African American and African family. The annual Mass a tribute to the historic contributions of African Americans and a call for many to come together as one. Brooklyn Auxiliary Bishop Guy Sansaric, the principal celebrant.
You know, mankind is so diversified. And sometimes we take the diversity as a cause for separation and division, but we are all branches of the same tree. We are one, so there is unity in diversity and diversity in unity.
Brother Tyrone Davis, director of the Office of Black Ministry of the Archdiocese, helped organize the program, which also honored the legacy of service and faithfulness of historically Black fraternities and sororities, many of whom are members of the Catholic community. They're known as the Divine Nine.
The 9 Black fraternities and sororities have been in existence starting in the early 1900s. And some of those who are members are also serving in Catholic churches.
Priests from various dioceses helped concelebrate the Mass. The faithful raised their hands and voices in prayer as the theme for the liturgy, serving our brothers and sisters, echoed throughout the historic cathedral. Homilist Father Andrew Smith, a priest of the Archdiocese of Chicago, affirming another common thread.
And we pray for all of those who are struggling, whether it be physically, psychologically, or emotionally. Everybody is dealing with something.
The special Mass, a rousing start to Black History Month that many agree must not end with the final blessing.
From here, we challenge our communities and empower our communities, because just because we wear these letters doesn't mean we're the be-all, end-all.
The Archdiocese of New York Office of Black Ministry was established in 1976 to address the cultural, social, and pastoral needs of African and Caribbean Americans. Here in the Diocese of Brooklyn, the Vicariate of Black Catholic Concerns, led by Father Alonzo Cox and Father Dwayne Davis, offers support and pastoral guidance to young African American and Caribbean Catholics and plays a leading role in Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio's Diocesan Commission for Social Justice. That is Currents News. I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.